Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. This monk is an expert. Qin Mu grunted and his body trembled as he turned into the form of Mars Sovereign, who had a bull's head and stood on two dragons. Overlord Body 3 Elixir technique circulated according to Mars Fire Marquis True technique, and his vital chi increased exponentially to counter the pressure from above. The third bull's eye in the heart of his brows opened up and shot a beam of fire upwards. A grunt came from above as the huge sun behind the head of the huge Buddha was pierced by the beam and shattered. The huge Buddha disappeared and turned into a young monk. The pressure on Qin Mu lessened by a lot, and the blazing fire around his body quickly flowed throughout the entire ship to melt away the icicles on it. The speed of the treasure ship increased exponentially as it entered the cloud layer and continued forward. In midair, the tall and sturdy monk held a 9-ringed monk staff while standing on one leg. Blood dripped from the other leg as he looked around. He had executed Vajra unbeatable technique earlier to take Qin Mu's drill sword form head-on, and the leg which had blocked the young man's sword move was mangled. Vajra unbeatable technique was not able to block drill sword form completely. Qin Mu had then turned into the form of Mars Sovereign, which managed to destroy the Buddha in which he had transformed by using Vajra unbeatable technique, forcing him to have no choice but to retreat. Over there. The eyes of the tall and sturdy monk lighted up, and he exerted his strength to sprint on the clouds. Every time he took a step forward, a white lotus would appear underneath his feet. They would then have a footing, which allowed him to burst forward with more power. Among the sea of the cloud, the treasure ship was faintly discernible. Qin Mu looked back and saw the monk chasing after quickly, his speed not slow in any way. These people who had ambushed him were all experts. There was no need to talk about Long Jiaonan and the woman with the surname Chiu, for they were both divine arts practitioners of 7 Stars realm. That scholar earlier and this young monk were no ordinary people as well. The scholar had his sword pellet destroyed by Qin Mu, yet with no spirit weapon, he could still receive the attack of Junior Protector Sword barehanded. Even though his clothes were torn into pieces, he was not injured at all. Junior Protector Sword was the sword of a first-ranking official of the Imperial Court. Even though Qin Mu couldn't unleash its full power, the sword was still incomparably sharp. For that scholar to be able to protect his body, he was certainly very strong. This tall and sturdy monk was also ridiculously strong. One could see how solidly he had trained his body when he could take Qin Mu's drill sword form head-on and only suffer a hit to one foot. If Qin Mu hadn't realized that the sun behind his head was the crucial point of Vajra unbeatable technique, the treasure ship would have probably been crashed into the ground under the pressure. Even though these two people were not experts of 7 Stars realm, they were at the peak of 6 Directions realm. The monk's leg might have been injured, but his speed was still very fast. He seemed to be slowly catching up to the treasure ship. Linger, increase the speed. Hu Linger heard Qin Mu's order, and the speed of the treasure ship gradually increased, distancing them from the monk. When that monk saw the treasure ship going farther and farther away, he stopped chasing and exclaimed in admiration, "What a fast ship!" Qin Mu saw the situation and his heart sank. That monk and scholar had both stopped chasing him, which meant that they were sure that he would definitely be unable to escape their ambush. This told him one thing: there were more experts ahead of him. The treasure ship sailed forward for a moment before slowing down again. There weren't many medicinal stones left, so if the pill furnace continued burning at full power, the medicinal stones would be wasted and the ship wouldn't last till Great Ruins. As long as we fly out of the area covered by the cloud, we will be in the territory of Great Ruins. At that time, we won't be far from the village, it will be just a little over 1,000 miles away. Qin Mu dispersed the form of Mars Sovereign and came to the bow of the ship to take a look. He still couldn't see an end to this sea of the cloud. The speed of the treasure ship now was still very fast, but the cold air bombarding him in the face was still bearable. At this moment, he saw a strange sight above the incomparably bright sea of the cloud. About a dozen miles away from him, colorful lights whirled continuously, shining in all directions. As the treasure ship got closer, Qin Mu saw that the source of these lights were pillars of ice. They were like huge ice swords, and when the sunlight shone on them, colorful lights would be refracted, making them look dazzling in the sea of the cloud. Every one of the ice swords was extremely thick and could only be hugged by over a dozen people. If these were used as swords, the only ones who could use them would be the incomparably huge giants. The ice swords seemed to be growing from the sea of the cloud, but the weird thing was, they spun upright, refracting all kinds of lights from the sunlight. It was thus evident that these swords hadn't formed naturally. Qin Mu's expression changed slightly, and he steered hard to the right. The flying ship that was constructed out of metal tilted so much that the deck was almost vertical to the sea of the cloud. The ship slid at an astonishing arc and sailed past the pillars of ice. "Linger, build furnaces to full power!" Qin Mu shouted out, and Linger's grumbles came from the hold of the ship. "Young master, you keep wanting me to turn on full power, but if we continue like this, we really won't make it back to Great Ruins. There really aren't that many medicinal stones left." Qin Mu ignored her grumbles and turned the steering wheel back to let the treasure ship regain its balance. To his left, the huge ice sword suddenly moved. It looked like a giant with multiple arms had suddenly pulled them all out. The huge ice sword sliced through the air and gave out loud whistles as they slashed towards the ship. The speed of the treasure ship suddenly increased, and Qin Mu controlled it to avoid the ice swords that were slashing down. He looked back in a hurry and saw a woman in a blue dress standing among the huge ice swords. She was very beautiful but had an icy cold look as she walked among the ice swords. Her vital chi was water blue. She had used her vital chi to transform into over a dozen arms which continuously did stabbing movements. The huge ice swords would then follow and do the corresponding moves. "Luckily, she can't catch up to me." Just as Qin Mu thought this, the speed of that woman in a blue dress suddenly increased as she sprinted over through the cloud. As she sprinted over frantically, her arms continued flailing about, and Qin Mu was stunned for a second. Suddenly, a huge boom came from the bottom of the ship, and it trembled violently as it tumbled in the sky, almost throwing him off. Qin Mu grabbed onto the helm of the ship for dear life, and when the treasure ship finally stopped, he saw the ice swords forming around as they popped out from the cloud surface. The treasure ship had collided with one of the ice swords earlier. Even though that ice sword had been shattered into pieces, the treasure ship was also badly damaged. The ability of this woman is extremely high and is even greater than that of the monk earlier. Her speed is also extremely fast. Qin Mu controlled the treasure ship to avoid the ice swords, but with more of them growing from the sea of the cloud, avoiding them became a challenge. Qin Mu shouted angrily, "Where's Dutian Devil King? What are you calling me for?" From the hold of the ship, Dutian Devil King walked out lazily with a look of, "Even if you kill me, I'm not going to help you." Qin Mu saw him looking like this and vented his anger on him. "Do you want to kneel down and lick my toes again? If you don't, you better come and help. You think I'm scared of you?" Dutian Devil King sneered, but he still walked over. "I'm the ruler of Dutian, after all. If you want me to save you, you better say please." Veins popped out on Qin Mu's forehead. "Please?" Dutian Devil was pleased and smiled. "There will also come the day when you will lower your head to me." He saw that Qin Mu was about to blow up and immediately hid his smile. Devil language resonated from his mouth, growing more and more urgent. This eight-armed and four-faced Devil King raised his arms high up in the air, and a black mirror appeared in the sky above the flying ship. A thick pillar of black light came shining down from the black mirror and onto the sea of the cloud. It looked like a basin of water had ink poured into it. The black fog swept in all directions, and in the blink of an eye, black smoke covered a radius of over a dozen miles. It even covered the woman in a blue dress. In the black smoke, the woman grunted and felt her heart become disorderly. All kinds of impure thoughts poured out of her heart, and even a crystal-clear Tao heart could not withstand it and become corrupted. Her secrets of hatred parting heavenly sword separated passion and hatred from her emotions while suppressing all kinds of impure thoughts in her heart. Only then could her Tao heart become one with the sword heart, transparent and pure. Now her sword heart was contaminated by ink, and the devil in her heart acted up, filling her heart with all kinds of desires. What a pity! If I had enough time, I could train this ice mountain-like woman to lick my toes in just half a day's time. Dutian Devil King sighed. Buddha voice came from the devil fog as that tall and sturdy monk arrived. He used his 9-ringed monk staff without any explanation. Light burst forth from the staff and shone in all directions, splitting the devil fog apart and driving it away. When the monk drove the devil fog away, he suddenly found a hot figure falling into his arms, and his Buddhist heart almost fell into a mess. The person who had dropped into his arms was none other than the ice-cold woman of Passion-Parting Palace. At this moment, her clothes were half unbuttoned and she was close to stripping herself naked. The monk immediately pushed her away and shouted, "Senior sister, you have fallen into the spell of the devil path, are you not going to wake up?" That woman in the blue dress, Ue, was loudly shouted at with his Buddha voice, and the devil in her heart was dispersed. She instantly came back to her senses, and her face became beet red. She immediately covered herself up and said, "I'm embarrassed, I fell under the spells of the devil path and let them escape." Heavenly Devil Cult Master Qin Mu is naturally proficient in spells of the devil path, to bewitch people's hearts and spoil their cultivation. The young monk trembled his monk staff, and the golden ring swayed, helping her suppress her heart devil. However, with this little monk here, he can't overdo it. Yue shook her head. His ship is too fast, it won't be easy to catch up to him if he escapes. There's no need to worry, senior sister Yu. He can't run away. Behind them, the young scholar caught up and said, "Poor logic sect's teacher Paul's disciple, Scholar Lan Yu greets senior brother Bankai and senior sister Yu. It's not just us who are hunting this heavenly devil cult master. Almost all the people with the same standing as us have made their move. They have laid down an inescapable net, so he won't be able to run away." Monk Bankai was about to say something when he saw a swarm of insects surging over. Among them was a huge red snake controlling demon gas and slithering over. Its speed was extremely fast, so it would reach them in no time. Its senior sister Chiao Yu from Three Wonder Castle and Dragon Rider sect's young master Long Jiaonan. Scholar Lan Yu took a look and said, "Long Jiaonan's temper is queer and nasty. He likes men and chased me around for half a day when he saw that I was handsome. Let us not meet with him." At this moment, countless sword lights crisscrossed in the cloud far away, looking extremely dazzling. Monk Bankai's eyes lighted up, and he said, "I wonder which sword sect's expert has intercepted Heavenly Devil Cult Master, let us hurry over." Everyone immediately agreed, ready move out, when they saw a person jump on the cloud like an ape as he chased after the treasure ship. Duke Ape Sword sect's expert, young swordsman Yuan Shan. Lan Yu recognized that person and immediately shouted out, "Senior brother Yuan Shan, it's impossible for Heavenly Devil Cult Master to escape, so why don't we encircle and annihilate him together?" Yuan Shan stopped in his footsteps and waited for them to catch up. "There's a treasure sword in the hands of Heavenly Devil Cult Master, so my sword pellet was destroyed by him. His ship is also weird, it's not made out of wood but metal. I stabbed it with thousands of swords yet I was still unable to destroy it. It's made out of black iron," Yue said. "When it collided with Hatred Parting Ice Sword, it didn't shatter, but Hatred Parting Ice Sword shattered instead. An iron shell ship that's flying in the sky?" Everyone looked at each other in dismay. How was such a heavy ship flying? Lan Yu took a look behind, and his expression changed slightly. "Long Jiaonan is here, let us leave quickly." Qin Mu shook Yuan Shan off his trail and immediately checked his surroundings. Thousands of holes had been opened up in his treasure ship by the flying swords, and it was leaking air in all places. Yuan Shan from Duke Ape Sword sect was nimble, and both his movements and attacks were all very agile. His sword skill was also abnormally sharp, but luckily, the body of the ship was made of black iron, so it was pretty sturdy and managed to withstand the attack of this sword skill expert. However, since the air started to leak through the hold of the ship, it slowed down. Furthermore, the bow of the ship had collided with a huge ice sword which created a huge opening. When flying forward at full force, the wind poured into the body of the ship which slowed it down a lot. If I could stop, I could fix this in half a day, but these fellows won't give me half a day. Luckily we are not far from great ruins now. Just as Qin Mu thought this, Hu Linger's voice came from below. "Young master, the head of the bronze beast below the ship has been severed, is it important?" Qin Mu was slightly stunned and said, "It's not important, the landing will just be a little bumpy. The little fox popped her head out from the hold of the ship and asked with shiny eyes, "How bumpy?" Qin Mu asked her puzzlement, "What are you asking this for?" "We are out of medicinal stones," she said loud and clear. Young master didn't notice? "Our ship is gradually descending, so we'll soon fall from the sky." Even though the treasure ship was still flying forward, Qin Mu now noticed it beginning to descend into the sea of the cloud. He immediately decided, "Linger, wake up that pig, it's time for him to contribute." Dutian Devil King went into a fury. "Rascal, who are you calling a pig? I've clearly contributed." Hu Linger rolled her eyes at him. "We aren't talking about you, yet look at you admitting you're a pig." Young master was talking about Fatty Dragon. "Fatty Dragon, wake up, stop sleeping. The ship is falling and young master said it's going to be a little bumpy." The dragon Chilean slowly got up and crawled out of the hold slowly. His belly was dragging against the floor, and he grumbled, "You were still calling me Big Dragon the past few days. Can he even fly?" Qin Mu was a little worried. He quickly checked all the New Year's goods in the hold of the ship and stored them inside his Dao sack. He then grabbed Dutian Devil King, thinking to stuff him in as well. However, the mouth of the Dao sack wasn't big enough, so he could only fit in a leg. Qin Mu was thinking of dismantling the body of this devil god, but Dutian Devil King said angrily, "What are you doing? Don't dismantle me, my consciousness now resides in this body, and if you dismantle it, my consciousness will be dismantled as well. Don't you know how to use this sack? Use your vital qi to light up the mouth of the Dao Tai." Qin Mu's eyes brightened up, and his vital qi poured out and lighted up the Dao Tai markings on the sack. Suddenly, the opening of the Dao Tai sack became larger and turned into the huge mouth of a Dao Tai. The mouth had a radius of 20 yards and could swallow Dutian Devil King whole. This is indeed easier to use. Qin Mu was surprised and delighted. He tied the sack to his waist and jumped on the dragon Chilean's back with Hu Linger before shouting, "Abandon ship, let's go." Fire clouds grew under the feet of the dragon Chilean, and he rose from the ship, which sunk into the cloud and started to fall. The dragon Chilean said simple-mindedly, "Cult Master, Sister Linger, have you guys grow fatter? It's much harder to fly than before." "The one that's fat is you," the little fox said angrily. "Look at how fat you are becoming. The elders in young master's family are very fierce. If you continue to be so fat, you will be slaughtered for the New Year's." As she was saying that, the treasure ship crashed into a mountain and shattered into pieces. The 3 pill furnaces exploded and 3 loud explosions rang out. The shattered black iron and black copper shot off in random directions, and the violent impact destroyed part of the forest. A huge mushroom-shaped black smoke billowed out above the sky of the forest. Hu Linger jumped in shock and looked towards Qin Mu. "Young master, you said it would be slightly bumpy when descending." "Yes." Qin Mu nodded and shouted out, "Fatty Dragon, if you don't run faster, you'll be eaten for New Year's." The dragon Chilean gave a cold shudder and immediately began sprinting with all his might. The fire clouds under his feet grew in size and became even more intense, increasing his speed exponentially. However, after running for a dozen miles, he began panting without end. At this moment, dozens of mirrors appeared around the dragon Chilean. These mirrors had risen from the peak of the mountain below them. Each mirror had 8 corners which whizzed around them. The mirrors became larger in the wind and had a radius of 3 yards. Currently, they were 300 yards away from them. The dragon Chilean saw that the situation was bad and immediately descended. However, there was also a mirror coming from below which blocked his path. The dragon Chilean was about to run upwards when a mirror also came from above. A sword light flew out from the mountain and hit one of the mirrors with a clink. The mirror then reflected the sword light onto another mirror. With the mirrors shining the light from one to another, more sword lights came from the peak of the mountain below and got reflected. The sword lights grew in number, and in an instant, they became a net which was extremely concentrated. But from the peak of the mountain, there were even more sword lights flying over. What a weird formation skill. Qin Mu's hair stood up on end. This was a kind of sword formation which used mirrors. They reflected the sword light, concentrating so that there was nearly no sword light wasted. However, it is also easy to destroy this sword formation. I just need to destroy these mirrors. Qin Mu raised his hand, and Junior Protector Sword slashed towards a bright mirror. However, countless sword lights hit Junior Protector Sword and blew it away. The sword tumbled and fell into the forest below. His cultivation is much higher than me. I reckon he is a divine arts practitioner at 6 Directions Realm or 7 Stars Realm. Qin Mu's heart sank. He took out the sword sheath, ready to take back Junior Protector Sword. The area in which the dragon Qilin could move became smaller and smaller. He suddenly swayed his head and opened his mouth to roar. His roar was like 10,000 heavenly thunders exploding at the same time, shattering the mirrors in the sky all at once. Without the mirrors to rely on, the incomparably dense sword net instantly vanished. An astonished voice came from the mountain below. What a powerful brute, to have such a strong ability! When the dragon Qilin heard the word brute, he couldn't help becoming furious and spewed a ball of flames towards the peak of the mountain below. A sword light flew off to the side from there. It was a human and a sword as one that had avoided the dragon Qilin's attack. The peak of the mountain exploded and the clouds of fire that surged forth in all directions separated the human and sword, throwing them into the forest. However, that person was still not dead, for he rose into the sky again. A mirror hung horizontally in front of him, and once a light shone out from within it, a pillar-like sword light shot out. The dragon Qilin ran away, leaving the sword light behind himself. However, that sword light was faster than the dragon Qilin and managed to catch up to him. The dragon Qilin shook his body, growing larger in size as he revealed his true form. He turned into a behemoth that was over 120 yards long, and with a sweep of his incomparably huge tail, the sword light was shattered into pieces. The swordsman was stunned for a moment, then cried out, "What a huge brute!" The dragon Qilin turned his head back. He spewed a beam of blazing fires out. That swordsman knew that it was anything but good and immediately rose into the cloud above to dodge this attack. However, he soon saw the brilliant beam slicing apart the cloud with its intense heat. A miserable shriek came from the sky, but they didn't know if the swordsman was still alive or not. Sunlight then came scattering down from the hole in the thick cloud. "Fatty dragon is so awesome!" Hu Linga praised. Qin Mu looked at the cloud which was sliced apart and had a worried expression. Among those that had chased after them just now, the ones with the highest cultivation were Long Jiaonan and the woman with the ice-cold expression from Passion Parting Palace. They were both of 7 Stars Realm. The next came the monk, the scholar, and the rest whose power was between 6 Directions Realm and 7 Stars Realm. These people were just the vanguard and their task was to test if there were any experts around Qin Mu. He was the cult master of Heavenly Devil cult after all, so there would definitely be guardians or other strong existences around him. Now, the dragon Qilin had been found out by them. The power of this blow from the dragon Qilin was not something that Long Jiaonan and the rest could handle. This meant that the stronger existences would now have to make a move. Qin Mu continued to flee for life, not stopping to fight Long Jiaonan and the rest because he wanted the hidden experts not to be able to guess if there were any experts accompanying him. If they couldn't guess, they could only keep letting Long Jiaonan and the rest test him, giving him the chance to enter Great Ruins. That would be the safest for him. Now that the dragon Qilin had made a move, this chance was lost. The experts of Heavenly Devil cult were ordered by him to send disaster relief, so there was no guardian accompanying him. The distance from here to Great Ruins is already less than 1,000 miles, let's run. Qin Mu let out a deep breath and said in a low voice, "The closer we are to Great Ruins, the safer it'll be." The dragon Qilin had an enormous stature, and his speed greatly increased from before. Even though he still had a huge tummy and panted heavily, he ran like flickering light and passing shadows. In no time, this behemoth had run over 100 miles under the cloud without meeting anyone. Suddenly, Qin Mu said, "Stop and land at the mountain below." The dragon Qilin stopped and shrunk his body, landing among the mountains below. He came to a snow-covered valley, where snow was 3 yards deep. The mountain range around was all pure white and looked very desolate. There were no buildings in sight. Blazing flames surrounded Qin Mu's body and melted the snow in the valley, letting him see the skeletons that covered the bottom. This place was probably an ancient battlefield where a bloodbath had once occurred. He had used his green heaven's eyes to take a look around and saw the overflowing grudge from this place, which was why he chose to stop here. Let's meet these existences that are chasing me, the heavenly devil cult master, right here, and see how much stronger they are. Qin Mu hardened his heart, and his vital chi burst forth. Countless bones piled up one onto another and soon formed 4 white bone altars. He took out the 4 devil god sculptures which he had hid inside Dutian sack and placed them on the 4 altars. He then took out the talisman treasure of Great Mountain Sect and started to cast his spell. Ghost transferring God dispatching runes command of Great Mountain Sect. These 4 sculptures were sculptures of Dutian's devil gods. Dutian Devil King had made him carve out 5 devil god sculptures to scheme against those devil gods that weren't willing to follow his orders. However, Qin Mu had only summoned 1 of them, so he still had 4 of the devil god sculptures. Rascal, if you summoned my true body, I could help you kill all of them, Dutian Devil King said in a fierce voice from the Dutian sack. Qin Mu ignored him, and cryptic devil language rang out. The talisman treasure swirled as more and more runes on the first devil god sculpture lighted up. Qin Mu gradually built a connection with a devil god from the other world, and with himself as the bridge, he contacted the other in Dutian. You're truly from the devil path, hiding here to summon devils, an ancient voice stated. You guys frequently say that you aren't a devil cult, so tell me, how is what you are doing now different from what a devil would do? An old Daoist walked over with a horsetail whisk in his hand and a sword on his back. Qin Mu wasn't affected by his words and continued to summon his devil. Suddenly, bloodlight burst forth and shone on this valley that was covered by snow like it was dyed with blood. That bloodlight overflowed into the sky and the crackling sparks turned into coiling lightning which burst forth in all directions. The lightning struck the walls around the valley and melted the heavy snow. Even the rocks were melted and turned into lava which flowed down the walls. The lightning that coiled around the bloodlight formed a net which crackled as it moved. A terrifying devil energy came bombarding from the other world and struck the sculpture which was on the altar. The wooden sculpture instantly ruptured and swelled, becoming taller and taller while its aura grew more and more terrifying. Dutian Devil King's angry and anxious voice came from the Dutian sack on Qin Mu's waist. Rascal, you had held back when summoning Kaihe Devil God, didn't you? Your summoning of the Disaster Devil God this time is much more powerful. He wronged Qin Mu this time. Even though Qin Mu had known much of the devil language when he was summoning Kaihe Devil God in Imperial College, he had not mastered it completely. After the days that had passed by, he had digested the devil language he had learned when he had made the Pact of Earth count with Dutian Devil King. As he mastered more of the devil language, the devil god he summoned would naturally be stronger. He hadn't been holding back the previous time. The old Daoist saw this terrifying sight and lost his earlier composure. His expression changed slightly, and he sent out the horsetail whisk. Go! The horsetail whisk became longer in the wind, and each and every hair turned into a fine sword that was dozens of yards long in an instant. The hair spread out in midair and looked like a swirling white umbrella from afar, however, it was countless times larger. The danger posed by the horsetail whisk was extremely high. Each hair had become a fine sword, and the finer they were, the harder to defend against they were. The speed of the horsetail whisk was extremely fast, and it sliced apart countless bolts of lightning. The old man instantly appeared in the sky above the valley and struck at the terrifying devil energy that was coming from the other world. Qin Mu felt the devil summoning getting intercepted and shouted out. The dragon Qilin rose into the air and gave an angry roar. His roar rushed towards the horsetail whisk and messed up its hairs. The devil energy which had gotten intercepted flowed through once again and continued to pour over. When the old Daoist saw the dragon Qilin, he was delighted and sneered, "Hairy brute, if you help a villain do evil, a calamity will befall you even if you do it unaware. I see you are handsome, so if you are willing to submit to me and be my mount for 100 years, I'll allow you to wash away your sins. Otherwise, it'll be hard for you to keep your cultivation from turning into ashes." The dragon Qilin blew up. He snarled, "Brute!" Flames accumulated in his open mouth and turned into a beam that shot towards the old Daoist. That old Daoist's body trembled, and his vital chi burst forth to form a tortoise-backed god behind him that was 30 yards tall. The horsetail whisk in his hand was a huge snow-white snake, and his other hand stretched out to block the beam that the dragon Qin had spewed out. The beam was sent to the side by the huge hand, and the overflowing flames scorched the walls of the valley red. Celestial being? Qin Mu's heart sank. The 4 hooves of the dragon Qin moved up and down, and fire clouds grew under his hooves as he sprinted towards the old Daoist. Suddenly, the horsetail whisk in the air swept downwards, and the hair coiled around the 4 hooves of the dragon Qin, tying them down tightly. The old Daoist was very delighted and smiled. "Little brute, aren't you going to submit? Do you want to be killed?" At this moment, Qin Mu patted his Daotai sack, and the mouth of it grew bigger. An 8-armed and 4-faced devil god mechanism leaped out, and on his 8 arms were 8 treasures. There was a guqin, a bead, a bow, an arrow, a saria, a broken sword, a devil-subduing pestle, and 1,000 banners pagoda. These were the treasure which Qin Mu had stolen from Roland's golden palace. When Qin Mu had placed Dutian Devil King, who was worried about not having a suitable weapon, into the Daotai sack, the latter swiftly grabbed the treasures to hold onto. Now that he was released, he naturally understood what Qin Mu wanted of him, to assist him in this fight. Dutian Devil King was perfectly clear of what he should do next. If he stayed beside Qin Mu might still leave him alive. However, if the kid was killed, he would definitely die too if he landed in the hands of the old Daoist. For the migration plan of the people in Dutian, he had to fight this old Daoist as if his life depended on it. The treasures Qin Mu had stolen from Roland's golden palace were all treasures on the level of sect legacy treasures and had strong power. As the biggest sacred ground beyond the Great Wall, the treasures that could be kept by Roland's golden palace were naturally no small matter. However, Qin Mu had no time to cultivate with these treasures. Once Dutian Devil King took hold of them, his murderous nature surfaced, and his 4 faces all looked fierce as he thought to himself, "If I catch this brat off guard and kill him, I'll be free. However, if I think about it, this body of steel is filled with traps created by the brat. If I killed him and the traps got activated, I would be trapped inside this devil god sculpture and be unable to move. Let me get rid of this little old Daoist first." The sound of guqin rang out, and waves of devil voice burst forth. The soul of the old Daoist got bombarded, and he felt his soul stirring as the heart devil in his Dao heart rose up. He immediately gave a shout and did a cleansing mudra to suppress them. The tortoise-backed god apparition raised its hand, and the white snake horsetail whisk rose. Huge waves suddenly overflowed into the sky and crashed down against Dutian Devil King. The 4 faces of Dutian Devil King shouted ferociously, and the power of the 8 treasures in his hands burst forth, smacking the huge waves that were crashing down on him. An earth-shattering bang rang out, and Dutian Devil King flew backward, crashing hard into a cliff. The white snake horsetail whisk opened its mouth wide and smashed against his body, nailing him on the mountain. "Little Daoist, you have no idea how terrifying the ruler of Dutian is. You have angered me." The cliff exploded, and Dutian Devil King flew out from the shattered mountain. He shook the 1,000 banners pagoda, and the 1,000 banners fluttered, turning into a 3,000 yards pagoda which pressed down on the old Daoist. The old man sneered, and the god behind him said a mudra, smacking both Dutian Devil King and the 1,000 banners pagoda off the sky and onto the floor motionless. Right at this moment, the intense blood light and the devil energy in the air suddenly vanished. On the white bone altar, the bare-headed devil god sculpture turned into a 300 yards tall devil god which gave off a world-shaking bellow. "Weaklings of this lowly world, prepare to welcome the wrath of great devil god Xiongpi. Hey, old man Dutian." Devil god Xiongpi looked at Dutian Devil King, who was under his feet, and couldn't help laughing out loud. Old man Dutian, for the supreme ruler of Dutian to actually be suppressed to such a state. Our Dutian has become what it is today because of a ruler as useless as you. Such a trash like you should just give up the position of the Devil King. Dutian Devil King was ashamed and angry. He was about to get up when great devil god Xiongpi looked at him from above and stepped down on him with a chuckle. "You also have this day, tyrant. Devil summoner, what do you plan on sacrificing to me for summoning me out?" "Him." Qin Mu pointed at that old Daoist, and great devil god Xiongpi sent a punch towards the old Daoist. The tortoise-backed god apparition behind him raised its hand to block, and a dull boom rang out. Qin Mu was left muddle-headed by the aftermath while the old Daoist got blown backward and smashed into the cliff on the opposite side. Great Devil Xiongpi leaped and punched the body of the old Daoist with a malicious smile. Delicious weakling, eh? A sword light showed up behind him and stabbed his heart from the back. The sword went deep enough to come out on the other side, its tip visible on the devil's chest. It had been the old Daoist who had used a hidden treasure sword to succeed in hitting him. Not bad. However, this body isn't what you think it is. Great Devil God Xiongpi smiled maliciously and raised his fist to smash the cliff. This body is merely a devil god sculpture, so even if you behead me, you won't be able to do anything to me. Is that so? A voice suddenly came from behind, and Great Devil God Xiongpi immediately turned his head back. A sword light circled around his neck 3 times, and his huge head instantly fell from his neck. Daoist Ku Yi, this stupid disciple has arrived late. The sword light flew up and landed on top of a cliff where stood a scholar whose green clothes fluttered in the air. His gaze landed on the headless body of Great Devil God Xiongpi before moving over to Qin Mu's body, whom he greeted respectfully. Paul Logic sect subordinate of teacher Paul Lu Wenshu pays respect to Heavenly Devil Cult Master. Heavenly Devil Cult's master is a senior, so it isn't overboard for a junior to make a move on the senior, is that right? Great Devil God Xiongpi's head flew up and landed back on his neck as he smiled. Another everyman has appeared. Qin Mu shook his head with a calm expression. Teacher Paul is of the same generation as me, so him only sending you and not making a move himself is already underestimating me. Lu Wenshu said leisurely, it's not that teacher doesn't want to personally meet Heavenly Devil Cult's master, he just has something else to attend to save all the people in the world. To assassinate the emperor? Qin Mu asked. Imperial Preceptor gave Old Rulai the face to let him save Teacher Paul and the rest. Old Rulai also gave his word that Teacher Paul will become a monk and never dabble in the worldly affairs anymore. Why has he gone back on his words? Lu Wenshu's expression became stiff, then he suddenly laughed. For the lives of the people in the world, why can't he go back on his words? Qin Mu turned his head back to have a look and saw a Daoist nun coming from the other mountain. She was wearing a white Daoist robe, and a plum blossom was embroidered in front of her chest. Wanderer Qing Yu of Spirit Bloom Palace greets Heavenly Devil Cult Master, she said. Qin Mu smiled. Why does a wanderer have to greet? That Daoist nun said solemnly, even though you're an enemy, etiquette mustn't be lost. Little cult master of Heavenly Devil Cult, you might resent us for bullying the weak, but you are the cult master of the #1 sacred ground of the Devil Path, after all. Your seniority is higher than ours, so this cannot be really considered as bullying the weak. Qin Mu gave a slight smile and said, not a problem, not a problem. Who else wants to kill me? I'm here to kill you. A magic cloud floated over and an arhat landed on top of a mountain. Prayer beads hung on both his hands, and each one bead was as big as a human head. He put his palms together and said, Heavenly Devil Cult Master has an extremely high position, so little monk is here to enlighten you and subdue the devil. May Heavenly Devil Cult Master give your guidance. The cult master of the #1 sacred ground in the Devil Path shouldn't fear an additional person such as me, right? Another person came to the peak of another mountain wearing tattered clothes which were filled with holes. However, he was high-spirited and laughed loudly with heroism reaching the clouds. I'm a subordinate of Beggar Sect's Master Chi Dayo. Lotus Hall Master Luo Sanpo greets Heavenly Devil Cult Master. I'm here to claim the Cult Master's life. That's right, Cult Master seems to have a little fox demon that has offended Sect Master Chi, and Sect Master Chi said that she must be killed. Hulinga immediately hid behind Qin Mu, only her head popping out secretly. Your Sect Master Chi is really petty, he's impotent. Luo Sanpo pointed at her and smiled. That's the little fox. Everyone, for me to be able to encircle and annihilate Heavenly Devil Cult Master with all those in the righteous path of the martial world is truly a lucky chance and also a joyous event. Let us call this convention of ours the Assembly to Slaughter Devils and Defend Tao. Assembly to Slaughter Devils and Defend Tao? Great name. In the mountain, Daoist Ku Yi crawled up and spat out a mouthful of blood. He then sat down on the cliff to regain his breath. If we can manage to annihilate Heavenly Devil Cult Master and return peace to the world, our investment will be worth it. Everyone, for the righteous path. On the peak of the mountains around him, emotion surged forth to the bosoms of all the great experts of celestial being realm, and they shouted heroically in unison, for the righteous path of this world. Kill! The 5 great experts were full of vigor, and their vital chi burst forth. The apparitions of gods appeared behind them, and each of them unleashed their strongest move as they unleashed their attacks towards the valley. Right at this moment, Great Devil God Xiongpi roared angrily, and all the energy in his body exploded. Boundless Heavenly Devil! Qin Mu immediately brought Hu Linga to hide behind the dragon Qilin as a terrifying quake shook the valley and loosened mountain rocks, resulting in them falling from the sky and shattering into powder. Even with the dragon Qilin blocking most of the sight, Qin Mu and Hu Linga still felt an unimaginable pressure on them. Their bones creaked from it. All the great experts of celestial being realm vomited blood and fell backward. It was unknown whether they were still alive or not. Qin Mu popped his head out from the back of the dragon Qilin and saw Great Devil God Xiongpi standing alone majestically. Hu Linga was surprised and delighted. Xiongpi is so powerful. Suddenly, Great Devil God Xiongpi's body started to crumble and break, inch by inch. They could hear the Great Devil God muttering, "The energy is depleted. It's a pity I can't harvest these sacrifices, but luckily I managed to see how pathetic Dutian Devil King is. Devil Summoner, I'm off." When he was done, his body exploded with a bang as his consciousness returned to the other world. Hu Linga was stunned when they heard the coughing of Luo Sanpo and the rest coming from the valley. The experts hadn't been killed by Great Devil God Xiongpi. "Young master," Hu Linga turned her head and looked at Qin Mu. "It's fine." Qin Mu rose and patted off the dust on his body. He pulled up Dutian Devil King, who was crushed onto the ground, and threw him onto the dragon Qilin's back. The youth was in high spirits as he put the 3 other altars into his sack and shouted, "Fatty dragon, run!" This video will end here.